Welcome, everyone. You've entered the panel of Sharing Stories of Change, Resilience, and Resistance with Our Children and Youth, moderated by Patrick Oliver in conversation with Derrick Barnes, London Ladd, Zetta Elliot, and Xelena González. This is part of the Dallas Literary Festival, and we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much, and we're excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dallas Literary Festival and all of its sponsors. I definitely want to thank Sandaria Smith for the work that she has done to bring this wonderful festival to Dallas, even though it's virtual. The lineup is fantastic and has been fantastic. The opening session last night was really good, and I had a chance to check some of it out and enjoyed it. But again, thank you to the staff, all those who made this come in to fruition. And I'm very excited because we're talking about young people, books for and about young people. That has been part of my passion for 24, coming up on 24 years next month, and I'm excited about the work that we have done with the Say It Loud readers and writers. And through that work, I've had the opportunity to meet, some dynamic children's book authors, individuals who really care about the young people in our community. They just don't do it for the craft. They do it because they want to see young people empowered. And I am very fortunate this morning, and Dallas, you're very fortunate, and all those who are on with us, you are very fortunate to have 4 individuals who are going to undoubtedly share their wisdom, their craft, and their stories about what they have done over the years to empower young people. My first presenter today, I'm gonna list all of them. Derrick Barnes, who's a longtime friend from Kansas City, Missouri, now living in the Charlotte area. Xelena González, who I met recently through some work that I've done with her. I met her at the Texas Books Festival, and then we worked together at one of the elementary schools in Little Rock, Arkansas, that I worked with Chico Elementary. London Ladd, I had him on my radio show, met him through a mutual friend, and just a really cool brother. Glad to have him on. And then Zetta Elliot, who I met at just a number of literary events. I can't remember how we met, but I'm glad we did meet, and I had a chance to hear on a panel. I said, hey, I got one day get Zetta to be part of what I do. So she's been on my radio show before, Literary Nation. But very quickly, before I get into the panel, it is Women's History Month, and I want to start with you, Zetta, then Xelena, and then Derrick in London. If you don't mind, it's Women's History Month. Tell us about some of the sheroes in your life, both personal and then maybe literary.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. And thank you for acknowledging Women's History Month. And of course, we should be celebrating the contributions of women all year round, but we do take a moment once a month or 1 month of the year to spotlight some people. You can't really see, but on either side of me, I have shelves, and I have sort of my ancestor photos up there. So when I think of women who have inspired me personally, I would certainly start with my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers. I am named for my grandmother, Zetta Elliot. Unfortunately, we don't have a photograph of her. All we have are stories. And the story is that she was committed to an asylum in Antigua when my father was a child. And they say that she died there. And he never spoke about her, but he named me for her. And so I feel very proud that every time someone says my name, they're saying her name. And the ancient Egyptians say, as long as you say the names of the dead, they continue to live. So I've been really fortunate to have women storytellers in my family. My grandmothers would always let me sit with them, and they would talk for hours and hours. And then in terms of more public figures, Ida B. Wells was a really important shero of mine. And I now live in Chicago, and I got to go see where her house was, which was fantastic. My dissertation was on lynching. And so obviously Ida B. Wells was a radical anti-lynching activist and journalist, a writer, an organizer, a feminist. So she's someone who's meant a lot to me. We just lost Beverly Cleary. I am struggling to remember how many of her books I might have read as a child. But certainly in terms of literary foremothers, Jamaica Kincaid, Toni Morrison are two people that stand out in my mind. And I probably wrote a dissertation on lynching and racial violence because I read and loved Mildred D. Taylor's Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. So I can't forget about her.
Thank you. That was such a big question, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna think of a good answer." But you had me completely engrossed in your answer, Zeta. So thank you for that, and thanks for the question, Patrick. Okay, so I'm gonna admit something here. When I was a kid, you know, Whitney Houston was really big, and she had this song. I think it was called "The Greatest Love of All," right? And I've always like really broken down lyrics, like really listened to them. And so there was this message of like not walking in anyone's shadow and believing in yourself. And I really took that to heart. And so as I grew up and people would say, who's your hero? Who's your role model? I would say, nobody. I'm like, I'm going to carve my own path sort of thing. Right. And so someone really pressed me about this in a movement workshop recently. And they said, no, like you have to pick someone. So of course I thought about the women in my family, like Zeta said, like, because they're around me, they're the ones who continue to support me. My mother, my sister are mainly among them. I too am very, I feel very strongly about feeling connected to my ancestors. And the week that I was born, my great grandmother passed away. Her name was Secundina, but they called her Mama Cunina, and she was the curandera and the partera, so the healer and the midwife. You know, typically they did the same thing in our village in Mexico. And I've been told, and I feel it often, that the work that I do is a continuation of that healing work. So I feel very much connected to her. In the movement workshop that I spoke about earlier, you know, the facilitator really prompted us. I think he had us choose 2 or 3 people, and I happened to choose a literary figure, and that's Yuji Morales. And so she's a Mexican writer and illustrator for children's literature also. So hopefully some of you are familiar with her work. And she's been she just has exquisite work to offer our children, to offer the world. And personally, she's just been a huge support for me, and is just always so bright and poetic in the way that she answers questions about life in general. And so she's become a good friend. So those are my answers. Thank you for asking.
Yes. Derrick?
I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon to everybody, man. So good seeing y'all faces. I miss some of y'all, man. I miss going to conferences and festivals and seeing y'all. Zetta, what's up? What's up, London? So Dario, what's up, y'all? Man, Pat, you know how much I love Black women, man. I could talk about this all day, man. Like I don't know where I would be without Black women. I don't know a Black man that can't say that, or at least should not. I mean, how can you not admit that Black women have been pillars in your life? I know that my mom, this is a little country girl from Clarksdale, Mississippi. Part of that whole migration of us moving from the South and moving up north. Her and her siblings moved to Kansas City, Missouri. My mother barely has high school education, but as long as I know my mom, she's been 3 things. She's been a strong Christian, she's been a hard worker, and she's extremely positive, man. She would take me to the library in a wagon, one of those radio flyer wagons, to pull me to the library on Saturday mornings. The only day she was off. She was off on Thursdays and Saturdays. Take me to the library, pull me in that wagon, and I started reading when I was around 4. Loading up that wagon, take it back home. I would tie a flashlight with a shoestring and hang it in the closet, put pillows in the closet and read in that closet. And my brother thought I was the weirdest little dude ever, man. But it's because of my mother that I fell in love with words. And there's a couple of teachers, Miss Shelby, my 5th grade teacher. She had this long flowing Jerry curl. I'm talking about, it looked wet, but it was dry. She used to just flow, you know. And I fell in love with hip hop music at that time. And so she wanted to offer us something different. So she introduced us to the writers from the Harlem Renaissance. And of course, you know, being from the state of Missouri, I fell in love with Langston Hughes and his Jesse B. Simple series. And I learned so much about, you know, character development. And it's all because of Miss Shelby and Miss Rogers, my uh, English teacher in the ninth grade. I went to school in Kansas City, like in the heart of the hood, you know what I mean? But this woman was like she was just a beaming ray of light, beautiful dark skin. She had this short little afro, and she was just so sweet to me. You know, everything I turned in was Pulitzer worthy. And I know it was horrible, but she was so supportive, you know, of my writing. And she was also my um, creative writing teacher when I was a senior. And you know, by that time, you know, my head was huge because you know, I look forward to coming to her class because I knew everything I turned in. You know, she would love it. I think about her when I'm working with young people now. That it's so important how we interact with young people because you know, many times I think we may be the only positive influence that they have for that day, and it doesn't cost you anything, you know, to be supportive and to be positive. And I've learned that from the Black women in my life, man, and to be loving. So I
Thank
love
you.
y'all
Thank you.
to death.
Brother London?
Everyone. I think for me, my mother, first and foremost, I got to thank my late mother. I thank her for everything, obviously for the gift of life, for the gift of hard work that she was able to persevere in raising me and the sacrifices. So, you know, the best thing that I can do in honoring of her passing is just working hard and dedicating myself to my craft and doing well. Because when I was a boy, the most important thing for me was to make her proud. So because my mom was white, I was biracial, mixed. So whenever she would introduce me as her son, and I would come over, and they would kind of look around like, and I would realize, and this is like late 70s, 80s. So they look down and they would see me, and they were like, oh, you know. So it was always important for me to make her proud. To when I was introduced or in public with her, and just to make her, you know, because I knew that made her proud, just to kind of see this is my son. And yes, we may not look the same, but he is as beautiful as, you know, as she was. And like I said, for me, since her passing, everything that I do is to honor her and to work hard for her and to make sure that it's in my spirit, it's right for her. I think in the art world, I was lucky enough as an undergrad studying illustration at Syracuse University to work with Yvonne Buchanan. She's amazing. She's an amazing illustrator. She was very honest. So my development as a creator and taking criticism, which is not negative, you know, it's meant to make you better. And that's what she did. And you know, even when I graduated and I was considered a peer now, I still went with her. Even when my daughter was a high school student and Yvonne was doing like a high school program for kids, I had my daughter train with her because if I trusted her and she did well with me, I know she was going to do well with my daughter. And I think, you know, for artists, I know Edmonia Lewis was a big influence. I never forget going to Washington and then seeing the death of Cleopatra and just standing there. And you know, you go through and you look at all the beautiful artwork, you know, sculptures, paintings, but I just never forget just standing, just looking and just being in awe just of the beauty of it. And then realizing that that was created by an African-American woman, and just the sheer detail and the emotion of it as this figure lay dying. But it just resonated and made such an impact. So, you know, I think for me, like, and I have, you know, obviously Toni Morrison is a huge influence on me. It made an impact, and there's just so many women. But I think for those three right there are probably my ones that I think of the most.
Well, thank you all very much for those important women in your lives. want to give a shout out to my mother, the late Ethel Oliver, the mother of 7 children. For me, she was like a CEO of 8, and to have 7 kids, and then her husband, she had to run a whole company, including her husband. So I was thinking my mother oftentimes is someone who was able to do just that, and um, into reading magazines and books, always stacks of magazines. I always saw them around us. They were always in our household, Ebony Jet, all those magazines, they were, in our home all the time. And that's when I first began to embrace Black literature, seeing those poems in Ebony magazines, those noted authors and writers, particularly poets like Aki Madhubuti, Sonny Sanchita, Giovanni Maya, those favorite women artists for me, Aretha Franklin. Hey, I know we're talking about, but I grew up on Aretha, so I have to give Aretha a shout out for being a wonderful writer, because if you go back and look at Aretha's lyrics, that is poetry. That is, beautiful narrative, beautiful stories. So shout out to Aretha Franklin for being one of my favorite writers of all time. Hey, the title to our listeners out there, our viewers out there, the title again of our panel today, sharing stories of change, resistance, and resilience with children and youth. And when we think about, using words like uh, resiliency and resistance and change, when we're talking about young people, we oftentimes think about why those words used when we're talking about young people. But, if you look at the writings of each one of the authors we're with, and look at the times that we're in now, we have to write those stories that promote just that. Because think about it, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and I'm quite sure a lot of young people are confused about why we see people wearing masks. These stories of 500,000 people dead. And so, and then we see uh, issues of racism around children. And where I'm from, in Arkansas, a high school, elementary school teacher made a black boy wash out a toilet bowl with his bare hands. So imagine, what the child had to deal with. So each of you, can you please share with me your most recent writing and how that writing kind of spoke to today's title? That's one of the reasons that I invited, each and one of you to talk about, resiliency and why you write about resiliency and change. And again, I'm gonna start with my ladies because it's Women's History Month, fellow, so I'm gonna let them go first. I'm gonna let you get in there first.
All right. So yeah, I think, even when it isn't a pandemic, many of the children in our communities are, dealing with fairly high levels of trauma. Certainly not every child, but a lot of children are. And then that's heightened and exacerbated by the pandemic. I know that for me, getting through the past year, poetry has been essential. And I think writing poetry and helping children to write poetry has been really empowering and therapeutic. So I self-published a book in late 2020 called Roots Run Deep. And that was a way of paying tribute to my grandmother and the stories that she told us over and over again. My grandmother, most of my family's in Canada, but she believed that she was descended from the brother of Bishop Richard Allen, who founded the AME Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I wasn't surprised that I ultimately wound up moving to Philadelphia and then to central Pennsylvania and started thinking about the parts of the narrative of African people in the Americas that I had never heard of. So I would say that my parents were fairly conservative, devout Christians. But my father had a Black Power moment in the late 70s, and he founded a summer camp to teach kids about African history. And so I very clearly remember us making paper mache masks. And I remember learning about Mali and the empires of Songhai. And then I remember him making us watch Roots. And I got up and left the room when there was a whipping scene, and he came out and hauled me back into the room. So that wasn't sort of, the gentlest introduction to the trauma of enslavement. But I just thought, if I were teaching children today about enslavement, I wouldn't start in that moment, right? And I wouldn't start with the wondrous empires, the gold of West Africa. I would just start with who we were. We weren't taken from Africa just because we were bodies that could work. We had skills. We knew how to grow certain crops. We knew how to fight. Many folks were scholars. They were also artisans. We were storytellers. You know, we had so many skills that we brought with us to the Americas. And then we held on to those, even though people were making every effort to strip us of our language and our culture and our gods. So Roots Run Deep was my attempt to say to young people, you know, we are in the struggle, like we are in the heat of it right now. So many protests. To think that there are children being born and Black Lives Matter, you know, that's some of the first words they're going to speak. They aren't going to think twice about seeing people in the streets marching and protesting, but we come from a long tradition of resistance and resilience. And it was really important to me in Roots Run Deep to show moments of tenderness and storytelling and art making and joy. And that's the same is true of my book, A Place Inside of Me, a poem to heal the heart. Some people characterize it as a Black Lives Matter book, and I'm fine with that. And it does touch on police brutality, specifically the murder of a young woman in a Black community, but it's really about healing and how a community comes together, because you don't heal as an individual on your own. We need each other. And in this moment of the pandemic, when we're separated to stay safe, I think stories connect us. And coming from Africa, from an oral culture where people told stories precisely to keep us connected and to pass down lessons, I think that's the message of resilience and resistance I want kids to take from my books.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I also grew up on the heels or on the shoulders of parents who were very involved in the community. They were very involved in the Chicano movement, and because our neighborhood is very mixed, it was like my father's worked very much with the Black community, and so it's like those folks were like coming out of the Black Panther movement and coming out of the Chicano movement, and it was sort of like, what's next? And there was a lot of wonderful community organizing that they did, and so I grew up, you know, going to protests and going to meetings and trying to hold like city council members accountable, or, you know, seeing that. And both Adriana and Adriana's the illustrator of my work, the children's books that I have out now, and the image that's behind me. And so, and our parents both worked in those movements. And so I think for both of us, that question was like, well, what are we gonna do? You know, like we weren't people who became woke in college. Like we sort of knew this, but we also have these creative gifts. And so there was that question of like, what do you have to contribute to this ongoing movement, right? And I think for us, for me, it's very much about creating a new narrative, right? And also going back, because I struggle with that question too, Zeta, like, where do you start? Like, there's so much to grapple with, right? For me, it's a big part is it's self-love. It's the power of self-love, because and I've said this before, but our children are inundated every day with, you know, they go to school, and school is important. It's absolutely important, but they're taught how to think and how to behave and which subjects are important, and someone's version of history that's not really ours, right? And no one teaches our children how to love themselves. And I think that's super important, especially for children of color. And so that's something that I really want to impart in my work, because it's important. It has to start there. With their parents as well, it's important, because most adults will read the news every day, and that obviously depicts our people in a certain light, right? And without taking into account the well, you know, the systemic what's the word I'm trying to look for? Just the issues of poverty and the reason that our people are in the place that they're in. Anyway, so with these books, like I wanted to show you one page. This is our next book. And so we're looking at the elements, and there's this one page, and it's a sweat lodge, right? So I really like to go back to our Native American roots, but they're talking about like what's happening with fire and what's happening in the sweat lodge. And it says they have survived fire, and so they give us strength. and the things that water teaches us, and the things that we learn from air and from the earth, right? So that's the image that you see here. So it's very much about resilience, finding that strength within ourselves, just like all around us. Our first book. I also have a self-published book, and some of you might be familiar with these images. It's the loteria images. So for the Mexican American culture, these images are like, it's an old game. It's very popular, but I attributed these affirmations to each image so that, you know, we can find a new way of looking at images that already exist within our cultures and ways of cultivating that self-love as a way of moving forward. When I went off on my tangent about adults taking in mainstream media news every day, I think that's the power of children's literature, is that it's a space that you share with your child. I think picture books are for everyone, but because that particular practice involves not screens usually, right? But this shared space and warmth and breath with a child, to me, what we're imparting as authors and illustrators is for both the adult and the child. So to go back to like seeing the beauty in yourself and in your culture, it's just, it's powerful. And I think it has the power to transform.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Derrick?
I don't know what year it was, but I think there was a time in my career where I was trying to just get put on, just get my foot in the door. So I just, like, between 2011, 2014, I did a lot of odd jobs. I was working for the outreach department for the Kansas City Public Library. And I wrote like 20 to 30 books, and some of them were just Black versions of popular white books that were out, you know what I mean? And everyone here knows what it's like to play to the gatekeepers at these large houses. And I was really focused on that until I had a conversation with one of my sons. Or it wasn't really a conversation. I was working on one of the books, and the little brother came in, he saw me working, and they know I was struggling. At this time, I hadn't had any books since Ruby and the Booker Boys, really, that were taking off. And he just came and put his arm on me, and he was like, "Daddy," I think he was like 10 years old. I think he was like 11, 12. "Daddy, you know what you should do? You should write the blackest book ever." And then, that just really did something to me, man, because I'm thinking about, who are you writing for? And I think we have to always keep that in mind. There's a Black Star song where Mos Def says, "Blacker than the midnight sky, a Bed-Stuy in July." And I always want to be that Black. You have to be unapologetically Black. The book that blew my career up was published by a little house outside of Chicago that makes cookbooks. You know what I mean? So I think we've been taught that we have to turn down our Blackness when you should turn it all the way up and get more speakers. I'm doing a book with brother Tommy Smith. He was once the fastest man on the planet, and most of us know him for being the brother that held the Black Fist up. And I've gone down to his home to hang out. And the first time I was real bugged out because it's Tommy Smith. I expect him to answer the door with a black jacket on and a black glove on his fist, And I went down to his man cave. I mean, I stayed all day, both times. His wife was so sweet, gracious, and his wife is the mother of Montel Jordan, which really bugged me out, man.
Wow.
But you would think that by this time, which he was actually the first Colin Kaepernick, you know what I mean? You would think by this time he would be tired of telling his story, but he was so gracious and he was so kind. And at one point I felt like I was talking to one of my cool ass uncles or something, man. But the longer the conversation went, the more I realized how important this book is going to be, because really he's just a country boy from a little small town in Texas. And I think kids need to understand that you don't have to be from a certain family. You don't have to be from a certain neighborhood. You don't have to come from a family with money in order to make a difference. He had one simple gesture, holding his fist up in 1968, probably the most turbulent year in the history of this country in regards to race relations. And we know him as that Tommy Smith, but when I went through his story and he comes from a sharecropping family in Texas, and then they moved to California, and they ended up, kind of doing the same thing. But just a very cool, just country old dude, man. And he has created a symbol that will last forever to inspire people of all races, pretty much. But man, you can start from ground zero. But I think that most Black artists, we have a obligation. We have an obligation. I don't care if you do needlepoint or you dance or you sing or you write. You have an obligation to make sure that you present Black and brown people in the most authentic and the most beautiful and the most brilliant light that you can possibly shine. So I have committed the rest of my career. Shout out to Brother Solo. He's over here soaking his feet because he had a football game yesterday. But to make the blackest books possible, man, for the rest of my career.
Brother London, as a visual artist, as a painter.
Yeah, I think, and it's funny, it was in 2017, and I was illustrating books for about 10 years. And a lot of the books that I was doing are the civils. It's the civil rights, it's the Civil War era. And I think when I got my last book, and I love the book, Midnight Teacher, Lillian Granderson's Secret School. It was a great story. But, when I did when I was illustrating it and putting it together, I told myself, okay, I'm getting burned out. Because when you do a book, when I illustrate, as you can tell, if you've done research about when I did Frederick's Journey, I basically grew my hair out like Frederick Douglass. I took pictures of myself as Douglass. I visited all his sites. I did everything because it was a 3-year project. So I researched hard into it because I studied Douglass in college. So to me, I admired Douglass about his resiliency. So, you do something like Douglass, and then I'm doing Midnight Teacher, which is an amazing story of, during as the Civil War ended, and this woman is starting it's almost ending, and she's starting a secret school just for slaves to read and write. And you do the research and you think you know more about slavery, and it's like you find more stuff and it's just draining. And it's just like, you're telling these stories about, this period of American history but there's more to it. And I remember telling myself, and I told this to my agent, and I was like, I want to do other stories. I got to do something else. There's more to Black culture than just, we are the first ones to do this, and we are, marching, or we are escaping, and then we persevere. I know there's more for children of the day to kind of gravitate towards, something that's very contemporary. And I remember saying that. So when I went back to grad school, and I almost didn't go back, but thank God for James Ransom, because he's a mentor to me. He pushed me back into grad school, and going back into grad, because I just basically said, I'm done with children's books for now. I need to take a break. I don't want to do any more of these stories right now during those eras. I want to do something that's more contemporary, something that's Mormon, Black beauty, Black pride. I may be biracial, but I am Black. I'm sorry, I don't, I shouldn't say I'm sorry. I make no excuses for, who I am, and what I am. And I love who I am. And I love that power that I have as a creator, as a person of color creator, and the impact for young people. So, as I'm in grad school, finally, and I'm working and I'm developing a new way of looking of my work, a little bit more abstract, a little bit more colors, as I'm working and I'm just pumping out stuff and sharing it, and I'm like, I won't take any more books until after grad school because I just don't want, doing grad school and then doing a book project is hard, I could imagine. But lo and behold, there's sometimes things are not, what you think you want. There's other plans. But then all of a sudden I start getting, some recognition and great feedback. And next thing you know, my agent was like, hey, this publisher wants, they love this color, they love this style, but they have this book project. And it's black gold. And, just reading the story, it just really, it was exactly what I wanted to kind of really convey with my work as I transition into doing something different, to really bring a different perspective for Black youth. And, I've had other projects that's come along with Recognized. That's another one that I'm proud to be a part of. There's another book project, but the thing is, doing these projects now, as I'm doing them, I'm filled with such joy because I get to tell the stories and show them in a way that is more uniquely translated out to those young readers to really gain pride and flipping through those pages. And it's funny because, a major influence was like Derrick's writing. Derrick, I remember when we talked in Baltimore, a few years ago, and just seeing where you had, see where you were at. And that laid a seed into me. Like, yes, it could be done. And you can do it, your way, our way. And it's totally acceptable. And it's here and now. And I'm so excited right now as I go into this next venture, as I'm approaching 50 next year, but I don't care. I'm so excited for this. Because I'm supposed to be where I'm at right now, doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and God willing, making as much of an impact for Black youth, for all youth, to find, beauty and empowerment in themselves and pride.
Thank you, Dr. London, for that. Hey, many of the panelists asked a lot of the questions, answered some of the questions that I had in mind. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into Q&A because we have like 10 minutes left. And I know I got a lot of questions out there from people who are out there. But panelists, get ready to end in about 10 minutes. I need each one of you to give me maybe a 30-second to a minute ending statement, so be prepared for that. But we're going to take some questions right now. I want to give a shout out to one of my favorite librarians, longtime friend. All librarians always support my work, so I'm going to shout out to my friend Sasha Orange from Chicago, when I was in Chicago. Really, Sasha pushed me to keep going at this, keep working with young people. I'm sure most of my panelists, know her. I know Derrick knows her, Zetta knows her. But hey, Sasha, how you doing? Thank you so much for the support. You and the libraries, all those who support children's literature all over the country. So without the libraries, we know our children would not see the books they see. So hey, we do have some questions. Do we have questions in the chat box?
We don't.
We don't have any questions in the chat box. Anybody have all these wonderful writers up here? Well, I can ask a question very quickly. Each one of you, I know you have new projects coming up, Derrick, one of yours, but very quickly, each one of you tell us about your latest project and when you expect it out. Go ahead, Zetta.
Wow. So I have a middle grade fantasy series that started with Dragons in a Bag. And then the second book was The Dragon Thief. And I just finished The Witch's Apprentice, which is set here in Chicago. And I am working on a middle grade, well, we've just finished it, middle grade novel and verse with my co-author, Lynn Miller-Lockman. It's called Moonwalking. The two boys become friends in 1982, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And I'm working on a picture book, A Song for Juneteenth. We're just trying to get our illustrator selected, but that's what's in production right now.
Thank you. I have the galley I showed you earlier is for Where Wonder Grows, and this is by Cinco Puntos Press. It's at the printer. We've had a couple of delays, so COVID kind of messed up everything. And for small presses, you know, that's been a hard thing. So sometime this year, I'm thinking the fall is when we're going to see that out. I have a book coming out next summer, I believe, with Simon and Schuster. The working title is Remembering. They're selecting the illustrator now, and I have my little self-published project, Loteria Remedios. And for the first time, I've been wanting to do this for a very long time because I've done a lot of author visits and part-time work all over the place, really trying to make my way as an independent artist. And so I'm carved away this season of writing. So this is the first time where I've given myself a writing grant. I didn't ask anybody for it. I have no reports to turn in. So I'm excited to write something a little bit longer this spring.
Good for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Here, London, either one.
It's up to you.
Go ahead, London.
Okay, yeah, like I described before, I have that's coming out with HarperCollins. That's coming out, hopefully, finishing the artwork now. As you can see behind me, the artwork is hanging up there, and so I'm kind of working right now. I'm excited about that one a lot. So if you see anything on Instagram, like a lot of the cut paper stuff, a lot of the vivid bright stuff, that's pretty much, those are like my beta studies. They're not from the book, but they're just basically color studies in different subject matter about basically how this book is going to look. So I'm really excited about that, because I think this is going to be my first full picture book that's going to be really me, more me, not me trying to paint like someone else or making it hyper realistic, where I get to kind of really, you know, I'm just excited for that. I have a couple, I have Recognized with Just Us Books that's coming out, but that's a compilation. As you can see, Floyd did the cover, beautiful cover. I did one of the interior illustrations. I have one with Penguin, where it's just a collaboration, American Anthem, which is basically a song, the song American Anthem. So it was with 12 other illustrators. So I have a spread in there. I have another project I can't talk about until the contract is signed and it's announced, but you know, stuff is coming out, and you know, I'm just excited for this next phase of what I'm creating. And like I said, just taking life and just enjoying life and loving what I'm doing and just letting things happen when they're supposed to.
I'm currently working on 2 middle grade books. The third book from Gordon James and myself is called Do It for the People, Black Athletes, Activism, and Justice, where I go back and highlight 15 Black athletes in American history who have protested for, you know, various reasons. That book is going to be amazing. And I'm working on a middle grade novel entitled The Incredibly Human Henson Blaze. And man, we're working on selling the film rights to that. And I'm so excited about that book. The Queen of Kindergarten drops next year, along with a book with Tommy Smith. And my first animation project, man, this huge, I wish I can tell y'all about it, but the sister is huge in Hollywood, and she came after me, and I'm gonna be the lead writer on my first animation project, and that should drop late next year or early 2023. So I'm super busy. I remember I was sitting around twiddling my thumbs, man. This room back here was empty. There wasn't nothing on the walls or nothing, man. So every morning I get up, I'm just grateful that I have an opportunity to just tell these stories, create these characters, and hopefully make something that a kid will want to keep close to them, you know, always, or carry with them every time they leave the house. You know, that I think about that every time I sit down. I want to make something that sticks and lives within a kid's spirit, man, you know, forever, something that they will hopefully have by the time they become parents and they pass along to their children. So I think about that. I always like, remember, who are you writing for? I keep that in my mind, man.
Yeah, we'll give a very quick shout out. Somebody else I saw who's joining us. We're talking about children's books. Cheryl Willis Hudson is on with us, checking us out. So, hey, she is the godmother of children's book publishing. So I want to shout out to her and Wade for the support they have given us over the years and for them being here on with us this morning. So shout out to Just Us Books Publishing. Hey, everybody, you got 30 seconds to wrap it up. For aspiring writers out there, quick word to them. What should they be doing? 30 seconds.
Wow. Well, I will say if you're interested in being a writer, writing is a practice. It's something you have to do every day, develop a practice. You have to feed your imagination, take care of your mind the same way you take care of your body. Look at art, be with nature, see the beauty in the world around you, in your family. You don't have to travel to find ideas for stories. They exist within you, within your community, and you come from a long, long, long tradition of storytelling. So this is your birthright. Claim it.
Claim it. Love it.
Yeah, just draw. That's all I can say. That's all I've been doing is drawing. So, that's all I do. When I'm on a Zoom, just keep practicing and say it ain't better.
Wow, draw. Love it. Young people draw.
Yeah. So
Xelena?
Thank you again, Patrick. I really appreciate this. It's been a blessing to meet everybody and be part of this panel.
All right. Xelena?
All right. What everybody's already said, observe the world around you. We're creative beings. That's our one, gift as this species. And so create in whichever way calls to you. Don't worry about sharing it right away. I do want to say to the librarians and teachers and book buyers in the room, if there's a book that has a Black child or a brown child on it, it's for everyone. You can read it too. You can pass it along to children who don't necessarily look like that, because our children have been reading all these other books for so many years. And so it's really important to put our books in everyone's hands. And thank you all for being here.
All right, DB, we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, to all aspiring writers, illustrators, I just want everybody to know that this career is not like printing off a lottery ticket. Whatever you've been told or whatever you think you see, it takes a lot of hard work. All four of us entered this industry, I'm sure, 4 totally different ways, but the most common thing is we did the work. You have to put in the work. You have to write constantly. You have to read constantly. You have to paint, draw, and you will attract the kind of people. There is no magic solution. There is no template in order to, become a published author. The most important thing you can do day in and day out is put in the work and just try to improve on your craft every single day.
All right, thank you to the Dallas Literary Festival, Sandaria Smith, and all of you wonderful people. Hey, go to my website, check out the things we have coming up, Say It Loud, Readers and Writers, and also stay on and go back to the website link, check out the other panels they have coming up. Got some great discussions going on today, the Dallas Literary Festival. Again, thank you for all of my friends and associates and family members and people I don't know. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of this wonderful panel discussion about children's literature. I'm gonna turn it back to the Dallas Literary Festival.
Hi, thank you so much. We enjoyed this panel so much, and we hope to see you all in other panels.